Vamos a
We are
recibir
going to warmly
afectuosamente a nuestra
welcome
querida
our dear
hermana
lawyer,
abogada
sister,
Madaí
Madaí
Gutiérrez. Bienvenida, mi
Gutierrez.
hermana.
Welcome, sister.
El micrófono, mi
Your
hermana.
microphone, sister. The peace of the Lord. Can you hear me, Brother Gerardo?
Perfecto, hermana.
Perfect, sister. It is a pleasure to be with you on this day with your beloved public, with my brothers and sisters, once again sharing the table of analysis. There is much information, without a doubt. You have said it well. There is a lot of information that we have that is real and objective. We have no speculations. It is unfortunate to see how in these times, once again, the American system tries or is trying to correct the mistakes it made in the past. Old facts, bringing them to the present day to make them current as if they were new. It is then that we should ask the prosecutor's office, what has been the blunder that they have committed? Or should we say why the prosecutor's office has remained silent and in a media way, Isaías Alvarado continues with a step forward wanting to give information, wanting again to sully a dignity, an honorability, the stability of a person who responsibly has tried to comply with what he has been ordered. But it seems that the media, political interests, economic interests, seek in one way or another to maintain the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ deprived of his freedom. Whom is interested in this? All those people who form part of a group that want him to be deprived of his liberty, even though he has not committed any crime, because this is how it is demonstrated. It is important to emphasize again that the fact that a plea bargain is accepted does not mean that that person is guilty. We must talk about millions of thousands of theories that exist in relation to guilt, and we would not finish maybe in a year. But we are not going to allow ourselves, and we are going to raise our voices against the injustices that are being committed. Because just as the media has the right to assert its voice to expose lies, we have even more the right to raise our voice, to report the truth, to make known with the splendid work carried out by the Cyber Battalion team headed by you, by our sisters who are behind this program, whom I also greet with great affection and admiration, tirelessly, that moment by moment, and in a surprising manner, they show chronologically, with documents, with images, with reports, with videos that have been established, the truth of the conduct of the Apostle of Jesus Christ. This sensationalist behavior aimed at obtaining an economic benefit, and consequently that the Apostle of Jesus Christ continues to be deprived of his freedom. This can no longer be possible. A person who has already been taken to court and who accepted a settlement because the system made mistakes, and when a system makes mistakes, it's not because the person is guilty and didn't know how to do his job. It's because he didn't know how to do his job because he invents. And that's not just what happened in the United States. That happens in all countries. When you try to impute to a person of worth, when you try to impute to a person who moves the masses, because you have to speak objectively, as the Apostle of Jesus Christ, it generates fear. It generates fear in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, in the social sphere, because their attitudes, their actions, they are always generating a change. And we continue to see it to this day, that despite the fact that we have not been present with him for 4 years, his work, his word, his voice continues to be heard among his people, and we continue to stand firm and move forward with him because we know the work and we know his person. That's why we are here today, to analyze mistakes. Why mistakes? Did the prosecutor's office have a whole strategy? Did they not have in their hands all the proof to deprive the apostle of God of his liberty? So why reopen what has already been analyzed? No one can be tried twice for the same crime. However, this legal maxim applies to those who really were brought to trial and were proven guilty by full evidence. Here, the prosecutor's office has to be clear to us, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. They proposed an agreement. They were the ones who proposed an agreement. Why did they propose it? That would be the first question. Did they not have enough evidence to lead God's apostle to deprive him of his liberty without agreement, without any benefit, because he had allegedly committed felonies, federal crimes? Why was he taken to a state prison? Does the Attorney General's office know the jurisdiction? In other words, the sovereignty, as it is called in the United States, to which the apostle of Jesus Christ must be brought to these alleged crimes he committed? Why an agreement of silence? Why an agreement in which this issue would no longer be discussed? Don't they have a well-established strategy? Wasn't there enough evidence on the part of the prosecutor? No. The answer is clear. No. They did not have it, they don't have it, and they won't have it. And what they are looking for now again is to follow the method that is established in the United States. We are going to generate sensationalism. We are going to contaminate all the media so that this gives strength. And once again, they try to open a case that has already been analyzed and that already has a sentence and that is closed with a sentence. Society, that is why they have rules, a legal system to be respected and enforced. Realize then the legal uncertainty that exists in the United States. Today you judge me and tomorrow you do it again. Sadly, yes. And we are seeing it in this case. It is important that our brothers and sisters are informed, because in the media there is a lot of sensational information that is not truthful, information that seeks to contaminate our brethren. But that is why we are here in the Cybernetic Battalion, to take it forward and show it with the help of God. Amen, Sister Madai. It is a pleasure once again to hear your analysis from the legal field. And yes, it is strange that they are taking once again something that supposedly the Attorney General of California didn't notice, didn't take interest. They were very clumsy, very inefficient. That is what they imply. They were very incompetent. Why? Because they were shown 5 videos where there is explicit content and that incriminate the accused. It is sad to see how these people are using, and as a clear strategy to avoid the displeasure of appearing face to face, because it uses the same system of the minor. No, the minor who you are not going to face, you're not going to know who is denouncing you. You are only denounced by this person and you must respond. He can't be countered, cross-examined by your lawyers. Why? Because you're going to victimize him. Practically, in the American legal system, they tie your hands so that you, sadly, are in a state of helplessness. It was well emphasized yesterday in the communication that the Council of Bishops opportunely expressed how in that chronological chain of events, of abuses and violations of the individual guarantees of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, we saw the clearest, the most notorious, that prior to the trial that was already going to be externalized, they did not allow the apostle to present key witnesses. Pretty much they said, get in the ring with your hands tied. Talk the way you want. Do it the way you want. Why? Because you are already finished in the media. That is what sadly happens in the American legal system. It looks like a show, one of those shows that we see in the television stream networks to sell The more outrageous the accusation, the more difficult it will be for you to get out of that situation. And that's how it is. And many who lived in the United States will be able to verify. So, my brethren, let's warmly welcome our dear brother interpreter. Welcome, brother. Yes, the peace of the Lord. Brother Gerardo, Sister Madai, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure to share screen with you. This one, well, we begin this news that in some way, from the beginning, from the moment that it comes out, we note influences on it. We notice the way that these people who dedicate themselves to this sensationalism, to this news that sells only scandal, because they lend themselves, sell themselves, and do their best to speak ill and stain the name of the church, and even more the name of the Apostle of the Lord. Yesterday, there were a lot of news regarding this document, in truly very small, and we had it and we shared it amongst us because it's very clear. However, when we see the news, they begin to add more. They begin, as they say, to speak more things that have nothing to do with the case. They are already pointing out again. To my understanding, from what I know thus far, is that this is what is considered in English an indictment. It is a direct accusation, but not necessarily a formal relationship as we know this in the prosecutor's office, rather an interest of a legal power that want to ask questions and question the accuser, in this case, the man of God, and that is what we see. We have seen those who are in the United States. We've heard how this type of indictment, it has been used against the former president of the nation, Donald Trump, and from his own presidency, he has been accused and called to court, called in front of a judge, in front of authorities, for what? To give his opinion, or not a statement, but simply to ask some questions to him and he answer. Certain things that can lead to a formal accusation, criminal. However, we see the media already running with the news. They already put new charges against him. It is no longer, this is not true. They do this because they are sensationalizing. At the moment, it does not mean that they are new charges. These are accusations. And this is going to be carried out legally, whether inside one of the legal facilities, inside of a courthouse, or inside a room, or a place that is designated by these people who are in federal power. But I repeat, it's not that they have been charged new charges. They are raising accusations, and accusations that have already been put in the criminal case. There's nothing new. They are not new people. It is not new information, as the Council of Bishops have said through our brother yesterday. This is nothing new. They took from what they found in that one case in the past, but I repeat, this is nothing new. This has already been before a judge in front of a court, and it has been debated, and there are no charges at the moment. This is an indictment, an accusation, which is going to be interviewed by the person of the man of God to reach an end. How does this come to happen? To my knowledge, there are simply two federal laws is over all states, but it doesn't normally imply, the federal law, that after a state has already made a trial or an indictment, or had already apprehended someone, whatever it is, whatever they had agreed upon, it will normally end. Normally, the federal cases are very extreme situations. We see it in how, when it was, one of the examples that I've seen is when the state prosecutes him, and then somebody, the same federal state, he prosecutes him on the same charges. Why? Because it is considered a federal atrocity. In this case, it's very minimal. I believe that it's because I think that as an agency in this state of California has already put an end to this issue. However, there are people with an interest, or they can be converted, or we can call them a type of political game of a high-profile person like is the man of God. This one helps their political career, and that's why I feel like this issue is coming up again. I don't know, or we do not know how this is going to end, but obviously the simple fact that it exists is a cause of scandal. And they're the sensationalists. They include notes and they include things that have nothing to do with the subject. And they include people who have nothing to do with the subject. So, my brother, I wanted to expose this information right away, that in the moment there's an indictment, which is an accusation, but there is no charge. They're trying to find a way, to figure out a way to make this a formal complaint. Our sister Madai, if you have more of a difference between this, we're going to be ready with the comments, or rather with questions. Amen, brother. God pay you for accompanying us. And yes, it's very clear, very evident what's going on. And I would like to clarify a situation out there that these opposers, these detractors, I don't think they pay attention to the publications that we make here in the Cybernetic Battalion. In the previous programs, we're talking about the civil case of Xochitl Martin. I repeat again, for those who don't pay attention, those opponents who don't pay attention, who only go for the headline of sensationalism, for the loudest note, and don't read the context, or don't put their total focus in a context so that they understand what is being mentioned. In our past lives, you will remember, dear brothers and sisters, panelists, we addressed the issue of the complaint, the civil complaint, the civil lawsuit of Xochitl Martin, where the lawyers were questioning her, the former lawyer of Xochitl Martin, of why she had testified in the HBO documentary about the federal investigations and what relationship they had with Xochitl Martin. I want you to pay close attention. I know that our audience have much capacity, but sometimes we have to explain to our opponents, to the detractors, with apples, because they do not understand, and they do not understand when they are explained clearly with arguments, and even more so when we ask our dear sister, our lawyer Madai Gutierrez, explain to us why the lawyers were questioning Xochitl Martin and her ex-formal legal representative about those statements they made on HBO. Why? Fittingly, our dear sister Madai explained that there cannot be interest between a civil complaint and a civil lawsuit, or a federal complaint, or a federal investigation, which Xochitl is not classified as a victim. She is in a civil case where she pretends or intends to earn to be paid money, and she cannot be collaborating with federal agents because she is not classified as a victim. But in the event that there are interests of federal authorities with Xochitl Martin, she has to first fix her situation with them and then continue with her civil case, just like they did with the Jane Does. But Xochitl can't be playing games, claiming that she's with federal authorities and maintaining a civil case. It is not possible. According to the California Penal Code, it does not allow it. And that's why the lawyers of the Apostle Jesus Christ, they began to question. The lawyer could not stand it, and she just said that they were abstract statements. Those emails are there. The documents, we read them. What was her response? They were statements that were lightly, without basis, without foundation. So that's the context. I know that you, dear audience, understands. Now we find ourselves, brethren panelists, with this situation of this federal case, but that is being taken up from the state case. You have to take a closer look. You have to see how they are leaving the California Attorney General's office so much that they praised Becerra, so much that they boasted that there was a laboratory in Commerce, and they had so much apparatuses in terms of forensic science expertise that they were analyzing 60 or so devices, and in the end he forgot to mention the Jane Doe's devices where there were exculpatory material. And that's now 5 videos that they found on an iPad. We're talking about the California's Attorney General's office so much that they praised and celebrated it, that it was that the United States was the perfect place to take these to justice, when we know that the United States is the country that incarcerates innocent people the most, unfortunately. But the point here is that they pick up on these situations with a John Doe, or this is what we presume, that he is of a minor age, and that the FBI is now dealing with this, as my brother interpreter mentioned, to try to impute charges. Right now, they are in a preliminary stage to cross-examine the accused. Another thing, brother panelists, quickly, is that if you look at the statement that Isaías Alvarado made regarding the state case, each time he is recognizing what we have always been exposing. When we opportunely said the Attorney General's office is afraid of losing the case, the Attorney General. And there is always someone who doesn't study the case, who does not know of the case. How? If the Attorney General's office, well, they are in the United States. They're the perfection of investigations. So now it turns out that Isaías Alvarado, in his report on the Church of the Apostle, he had to emphasize that the prosecutor's office was afraid of losing the case because the prosecutor, Siegel, forgot to deliver and read messages from the devices of the Jane Does, what we have always been exposing, analyzing in detail. Now they have to admit it. Now they have to accept it. And he says, well, why didn't he go to court if he was going to win? Because the trial was going to be unfair. Apart from what happened with what the prosecutor failed to do. Yesterday I was hearing Isaías Alvarado blaming the prosecutor's office, or pointing out that the prosecutor's office was afraid of its incompetence in not handing over, because it is its duty. That is the duty of the prosecutor's office, to hand over all the devices that they have in their possession for analysis of the defense. So, we see the situation, brethren. And when we get to the previous stage, I know I have already told you about the trial, but it is necessary to emphasize, it's so that they did not allow the apostle to mount a legitimate defense by presenting key witnesses. Oh no, it's because at the end, the judge, when you came to an agreement, the judge asked him, are you, accuser, are you going to set aside a jury trial with witnesses? That sounds nice. And the Sister Madayi, I would like for you to elaborate a little more so that we may understand this act that sadly is handled in the protocols of the courts in the United States. After they tie your hands, prohibiting you to present witnesses, once you've reached a plea agreement proposed by the prosecutor's office, well, logically, the judge by protocol has to read to you what you are leaving aside. in quotes, when you had not previously been allowed to present evidence and what you had at your disposal. In other words, I want it to be understood, dear audience, that not only is it to go to the top, but you have to see it in context. You have to see the background. You don't allow me to defend myself in trial, but when we reach an agreement with the prosecutor's office, you arrive and by protocol you have to read me those announcements so that I can carry out the agreement I reached with the prosecutor's office. What do you say about this, sister? This is a very interesting topic, and let's do that recount to see this background. We must always keep in mind that we are facing a political trial. This is 100% political judgment because we start from the premise and objectively, humanly speaking, socially speaking, that the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Nason Joaquin Garcia, is a person who has caused an impact worldwide. First of all, since he took up his ministry about 9 years ago, we are going to be 9 years with God's help. 9 years ago, he took over his ministry. He begins to generate a boom in such a short time, and the church, the light of the world, began to have a very great growth. What happens with this? For those people who have interest in power, because to move a mass, and we must not be scandalized, we must not tear our garments, we must understand things as they are, because this is the society in which we live in. It's a society that we move in. A person who simply by raising his right hand, his left hand, greeting or saying, let's go onward, or manifesting it, that person has a real power and not fictitious. And this is what frightens religious sectors, political sectors, economic sectors in our world, in this universe, in this world. There are many exist, many interests that move and that sometimes we do not perceive or do not know them, but sometimes we do give ourselves to the task of doing so. We are going to see that there are indeed powers that seek in one way or another to restrict the freedom of a person who seek to generate change, not only in the local level, not only internally within this community, within their parishioners, but also externally. This power is reflected more when that community begins to be whole, compact, powerful, and its behaviors are transported outwards into society, and they begin to see that change. And then the light of the world begins to be part of a real factor of power that determines the decisions of a society. In what areas? I repeat, in a political sphere, in a social sphere, in a cultural sphere. It's to say, within the social fabric. When we talk about the social fabric, we are referring to all these positions, all these areas, all these fields that are part of a society. I hope to make myself understood and try to point out different words so that we can understand this. Then, a person who attracts attention, who generates fear, because even though he does not know that his work is clean, honorable, and seeks stability and seeks an integral social development in the human being to keep him away from vices, to be prosperous both humanly and spiritually, of course, this is going to cause damage and concern to different sectors. And it's because of this situation that we have to take this person, as history tells us. It has told us about great characters. They tell us about great characters in history, and we always mention them. We have Mahatma Gandhi, we have great, and I only refer to them because I could say that in our country, I could simply not list all the characters who participate in the movement, the independence movement, in the revolutionary movement, who sought to change society, to change a country. But all that change in that country led to the change in human history. So it happened when the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, being so important, has to be deprived of his freedom. has to be arrested so that the church, the light of the world, does not continue to grow. And take him to a political trial. Take him to a political trial to leave him in a state of complete defenselessness. In political trials, individual guarantees are not respected, nor are human rights respected. You are defenseless because all the evidence that you can offer are going to be discarded because it has already been worked on, it has already been dealt with, and the matter for which you can defend yourself is already contaminated. And we have seen clearly in recent years that this has happened. It's not possible for a prosecutor's office to have concocted the arrest of an honorable and hardworking person for society and humanity where it considers that it made a mistake in the competencies. In the United States, it is called sovereignty. In its first sovereignty, and I'm going to make a brief comparison only in terms of the name of the legal figures of each country, because the American states, the United States, although it is true in the doctrine, in the books that guide us within the law, has an Anglo-Saxon system, and its practicality as a result of the reform that the world experienced in 2011 with the boom of human rights, its creation, its constitution, and the demand that the protocols signed by the countries be enforced, precisely to give guarantees to people who are deprived of their liberties. It is not an option or an option, but because it is a universal right for every person to be able to defend himself against an accusation. An indictment is an accusation that is previously made to take you later to it if it's considered suitable for trial. That is, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to the statements to see then if we are in the suitability or we are within the precise and fair situation to reach a trial. But we remember that in the case that was brought criminally, the apostle of Jesus Christ was not allowed to offer evidence because the jury was already contaminated in the media by people like Mr. Isaías Alvarado, who have always gone one step ahead, giving information, seeking prominence, obtaining awards as a result, but that the reality is always that it goes according to its sources, that we know who its real sources are. It has been Xochitl Martin. It has been her husband, because of course he is not part of a trial. Yes, he can speak and he can express his opinion freely. It has been Mr. Dominguez who sells to the highest bidder, and a few others who prostitute their careers, unfortunately, in order to get their daily bread. Well, here they leave him in a state of defenselessness because they had already contaminated the matter. All the legal information, all the information that was inside a courtroom and that was already being given to him ahead of time, and we can see chronologically the time in which Isaías Alvarado is giving the news and the time in which the records that make up the trial of the Apostle of Jesus Christ are publicly uploaded to the platform, and then we can observe how the development of this trial is being carried out. He was negotiating. He was with the prosecutor's office from the moment of his arrest. He was negotiating with the state of California, with its governors, and I have to say this with great respect. This is not an offense. This is an analysis that we make objectively. We are not offending anyone. This is a harsh reality that is lived in our society. And it is not to frighten us. It is to analyze, to make an objective and proper criterion. One of those guests said that right now is in the program, we are a serious program. And we are a program, the only program, that provides truthful, timely information and with a lot of respect. Well, if then you are deprived of your liberty, you are not allowed a moderate bail. They begin to violate the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which was created precisely so that the rights of those people who are deprived of their liberty are respected. They are not enforced. An exorbitant bail is set so that he cannot get out. From there, we begin to see how it is already being prepared, this political question, in order to want to bring him to trial and deprive him of his freedom, if possible for life. Evidence is offered. Alleged victims are offered. Alleged videos and alleged analysis are offered. A prosecutor has a responsibility to protect the society. The legal figure of a prosecutor, its legal profile, is to protect a society and assert the rights in a timely manner, in such a way that no requirement, no evidence, any element of what he has to be able to do so can be passed to the judge. Have the necessary proof so that you can declare guilty this person. But it wasn't so. During the course of this criminal trial, we clearly observed how, in one way or another, it was found that the evidence had been flawed by the prosecution itself. A test that is flawed is an altered test, a test that is no longer suitable, that its essence is no longer properly untouched. It is duly perfect to then generate a responsibility and prove the face to the authority. And so was the development of the prosecutor's office lie, using supposed underage victims. Why? Why underage victims? Because the Convention of the Rights of the Child has protected and protects children and adolescents worldwide. But today, we have to change our concept, because 3 days ago, the UN determined through the International Court, one for the whole world, that as of Wednesday, children will be called children and adolescents, adolescents. Because there is a law, there is a universal treaty that establishes what are the laws specifically for each one of them that must be applied in a family environment, civil or criminal. As the case may be, if we are seeing an adolescent teenager here, we must call him adolescent, because to call him as child is discriminatory from Wednesday of this year and of this month of October. Therefore, if an adolescent has the capacity, according to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, from the age of 7, he is aware, and this is how the law determines it, not by us, but he is aware and has a perfect and stable maturity to decide what is good and what is bad. Of course, he can make his own voice heard at the right and necessary time, because the law is accessible to everyone. If you can't afford a private lawyer, you can ask for a public defender to be appointed worldwide. Well, here we are seeing that they concocted a lie. They looked for people with a low profile. Why with low profile? People who did not have documents, people who do not have an established patrimony, people who did not contribute anything to society, nor did they contribute anything to anyone. What do I mean by this? That they are not people who worked for an economic growth of a country. They didn't look for people who supposedly had the courage to go and sit in front of the judge, which is unfortunate. And they formed a theater to want to impact society and then say to the person sitting there, he committed a crime. No, sir. He never committed a crime, because there is no evidence to prove it. What was shown through this program was that the test had been altered. Obviously, when they are altered and discovered by the defense of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, they expose the plan, and the prosecution can no longer take or make use of them in a clear and precise way, and has to discard it. And this is the case. A lot of videos, a lot of evidence were discarded because they made it up and they created it. And when a judgment or a sanction is based on a lie, the defects, the flaws, the lies, the deficiencies are going to come to light, and today we are seeing it. A deficient system is being exhibited. Didn't we hear, as you rightly said, Brother Gerardo, that many times it was said that they denounced in the United States because in Mexico the authorities were bought. And then what happens now? The U.S. system is required to provide legal certainty. They already judged once. They cannot judge again. They used the people they considered suitable to prove their facts. and remain as the best legal system, and no one messes with the United States. Well, here's the result. They didn't work. But let's go to the next point. It was already clear that the witness, the testimony of the alleged victims, and I say allegedly because it was not demonstrated. Otherwise, the reparations of the damage would have been even greater, but no. And it was not even reparations for the damage. I must clarify. But here we come to the next point. Xochitl's claim. Xochitl's claim wanting to prove herself as a victim. The lady had never had the character of a victim. On the contrary, according to the investigations on record, she had been a person who had committed crimes, and by agreements with the prosecutor's office, because that is what was in the interest at the time, she has been free and exempt from being denounced, because she can't be denounced for the crimes she has already committed. She has committed crimes of criminal nature. She has committed crimes of civil nature. Well, he denounces an alleged moral damage and wants to prove herself as a victim. The elements for this do not exist. Therefore, if you are not a victim, you cannot demand reparations for moral damages. She wanted to bring to her case, to strengthen her case, the alleged victims, Jane Doe's. She wanted to bring them to her trial. They saw that there was no economic convenience and withdrew. And what happened? By chance, when they are also sent, and that lawsuit is also not going to prosper because there is no moral damage. If there is no moral damage, then why was a person sanctioned who did not commit any crime? Casually, observe the temporalities. They are trying to reopen a case to say that there was now a teenager who thinks, who talks, who listens, and who is aware of the things, and to show them as capable, as incapable. Why as an incapable? Because the man had knowledge of the trial, had knowledge of all this, and judgment was never reached. Well, if you did not go to trial, it's because you were not interested in whether you're watching or being informed that you're immersed in an investigation and you don't go and you don't show up, you don't approach to find out what the quality is or why you're being part of an investigation, and you don't approach it and you realize and you let things go. This is a result, not the result of forgiveness, of lack of interest. This is a result of lack of interest in dispensing justice for you. Then, if there is not enough evidence, what the prosecutor's office has to do is negotiate. Negotiate so as not to look bad. Negotiate so that the person you unduly deprive of their liberty does not demand reparations for the moral and economic damage. The state has to pay not $500, not $500 or $50, but an exorbitant amount, and more than the bail that had been set for the apostle of Jesus Christ at the time. That is why it is an order to silence, to calm, to seal the case and the error, so that no one talks about the mistakes made by the United States Attorney's Office, is that they propose to the apostle of Jesus Christ a covenant that he has to accept. Yes. Why? Because this is the only way that he can obtain his liberty, that he can get out. And this is suggested by any lawyer, because no lawyer seeks that his client be deprived of liberty, and least of all for life, because the trial is contaminated. A lawyer trivializing, weighing how the development of the trial is going to be carried out. A lawyer has to go ahead of the judge. A defense attorney is always going to have to go ahead of the judge and also ahead of the prosecutor's office, the investigation authority, to know what is going to benefit his client and what is affecting him or her by a tainted jury. Of course, it wouldn't benefit him to take all the evidence. It leaves him in a state of helplessness. So then, his own saying is not enough for the judge to consider and live the spectacle that we saw in order to be able to declare him, because it was the judge who found him guilty. He did not plead guilty. He signed an agreement, and therefore the criminal case has been analyzed in its entirety. This has to be clear to us in its entirety. It was analyzed, everything was analyzed, and a sentence was handed down. Therefore, old facts can't emerge to say, now, what do you think? I was wrong. I had to take this for a federal crime. before a federal judge, as I didn't, because now in this one, according to the legal team established in the United States by the dual sovereignty that is a federal judge, he will have to hear this matter because we were wrong. As you judge that you knew you were not competent from the beginning to hear these types of federal crimes, and you had to send it then by the competent authority. But as always, the protagonism of all people makes them make mistakes or makes us make mistakes. Becerra was no exception. They wanted to educate this case to make it so important worldwide, to then weigh within the cabinet of the President Biden, and now the unjustifiably, unconstitutionally violating the First Amendment, violating the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment, he now seeks that the servant of God answer to a federal authority. This is not possible. The case had been tried, and a person cannot be tried twice for the same crime. And you can't be sentenced for the same crime, because we are in danger that then arbitrariness will be committed against again, and sentences will be handed down that are once again, that the right of the person are violated, that are contradictory, and that the stability of the legal system of the United States will be harmed. I hope I have made this clear. It's a political case. Let's not forget this, and therefore this is not enough evidence, because they have already forged and plotted. And so it is, sister, forgive me for the interruption of the video, but I think it is also pertinent, my dear interpreter. Of course, I would like to know your opinion on this that I am going to show, because our sister Madai has given us a lecture, the truth of which the public, the audience, appreciates a clarity in exposing such complex issues, of which are the legal issues, and the sister clarifies for us the scenarios that must exist in a fair trial. And unfortunately, as it was leaning towards an unequal, inequitable political trial, and we saw what happened. A devalued prosecutor's office, reviled not only by the Xochitl Martin, but by Jane Does themselves, who also spoke badly of the prosecutor's office and pointed out incompetence. Dear brother interpreter, before addressing with your opinion, I wanted to make it very clear to you that, and this is the perfect opportunity, brethren, panelists, to show this video. How is it possible that people who presume to be investigators in mental rubbish do not see the whole series of contradictions that exist between these accusers and authorities, who, instead of looking after interest and justice, simply contribute to mockery and public lynching, to condemn a person in advance without giving him the opportunity of a fair trial or a process, legal process, as our dear brother Minister Benjamin Chavez, a due process that should have been respected, and no, it wasn't respected at all. And proof of this is this press conference he held the day after the arrest of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, former prosecutor Xavier Becerra. But I want you to pay close attention, dear audience. I want you to pay close attention so that you can see and you can tell me who lies most, if Xavier Becerra or Xochitl Martin, about how they recruited the Jane Does to testify against the apostle. So pay close attention, because this is something very delicate, and I don't see that these mercenary journalists are talking about it. Once more, I don't see journalists like Moises Alvarado giving to the testimonies of former members of the church who point to the Xochitl Martin as a liar. They remain silent on this. But if so-and-so comes out of such a legal place, they give so much space and his testimony weight, why don't you publicize the testimonies where They say that Xochitl lies, that she is a delinquent. She is a criminal and deserves jail. They are not investigative journalists. They are mercenaries. So let's watch the video. Please pay attention. We launched a website where people who had information about cases of sexual abuse against people in religious organizations, priests, etc., could report these incidents without the confidence of knowing that it was going to be private information being communicated. Before we continue, first, inconsistency. I'm sorry, it's not the central issue, but I want to not let it overlook what we're hearing. Javier Becerra says that they launched a website where you could anonymously denounce abusers, predators, such as priests. But the first question is, not to mention that he's signaling that he launched a website. The question is, in the whole question of the entire administration of Javier Becerra, when was he seen giving a press conference pointing to a group of priests? Because there are many accused priests in California, and Javier Becerra did nothing about it. When did you see a single press conference, even if it was 3 minutes, where Javier Becerra exhibited priests who abused minors? When did he invite all the media to come and give 30 minutes of his not cheap space and broadcast it live? Right, that you never saw this? So it's another piece for you to see how this was forged, and it's going to be more clearer. So don't lose sight of where Becerra said a website was launched. He's explaining to the press how it was obtained, how they obtained the denunciations of the Jane Does. And under this website, we received information that through this investigation, we were able to determine that it was credible, that there was information, evidence that could prove the criminality of the Nason Joaquin Garcia and several members of his religious organization. Through that website, we have collected information that has provided. Did you listen closely, dear brethren panelists, dear brothers of the chat? Clearly, Becerra says, through this website, we obtained information. Through what? The one that the Attorney General of California opened exclusively to deal with these cases of abuse by clerics or ecclesiastical authorities of any religious organization. Let's continue to pay attention. People of California regarding abuse cases. Now, pay attention, beloved audience, of how Xochitl Martin is going to give you her version, how it was that they called her to recruit, to look for minors, so that her complaint would prosper. This is the lowest I have ever heard. That even that bothers me. This series of outrageous claims against the apostle of Jesus Christ, and that the media does not pass it on. I didn't see Isaías Alvarado and point this out. Pay attention, dear audience, please, so that you can see Xochitl's version where she denies, demolishes, and ends with the version given by the prosecution.
Entonces estoy demandando, sí, es un caso civil, pero porque lamentablemente no pude tener un caso criminal. No, porque los estatus de limitación aquí, aunque yo fui quien estuve tocando hasta que me hicieron caso por fin en la Fiscalía de California, y por la primera vez que me senté a hablar con Amanda Plesner, Diana Callahan y Thomas Donahue, de esas 3 personas, 2 de ellas mujeres, el hombre es el único que me creyó. Él fue el único que me creyó. Y él lamentablemente después me dijo, es que vamos a ocupar hablar con menores. Y yo así como que, ¿sabes lo difícil que fue llegar a ti, güey? Sí, sabes lo difícil que
Okay, I'm going to replay it again because this is very important. Xochitl Martin is saying and narrating that because of her, the case was made statewide. And Isaias Alvarado, in a report, he stressed that thanks to Xochitl, the state case was made, something that people surely must not be very happy about. We already know that they have differences with Xochitl and they don't want to mix in with Xochitl. But Xochitl says that she personally went to the California State Attorney's Office and that she was attended by 3 prosecutors, Amanda Plesner, Diana Callahan, and a male prosecutor with the last name of Donahue, and that the only one who believed her was the man. But he put a requirement on her. What was that requirement? So that your complaint may succeed, we need minors. Notice here, it is a totally opposite side from that website. Here are the lies. These people are so full of lies that sooner or later, these situations occur. Here, Xochitl Martin claims and says and affirms that she was sent to look for minors to denounce and thus be able to prosper. Pay attention that I will replay it.
California, y por la primera vez que me senté a hablar con Amanda Plesner, Diana Callahan y Thomas Donahue, de esas 3 personas, 2 de ellas mujeres, el hombre es el único que me creyó. Él fue el único que me creyó. Y él lamentablemente después me dijo, es que vamos a ocupar hablar con menores. Y yo así como que, ¿sabes lo difícil que fue llegar a ti, güey? Sí, sabes lo difícil que fue llegar a ti y que por fin estuviera yo aquí. Y sí sabes lo difícil que en estos, que te conteste una víctima de ellos que es de edad y ahora de menor de edad me la estás poniendo. Entonces, en este tiempo estaba el subreddit de La Luz del Mundo, y como yo estaba trabajando con ellas, con quien la hizo, ella es la que me ayudó en contactarme con la persona que contactó a la fiscalía, pero no me pelaron. Entonces pero siempre son contactos, ¿no? Sí, todos son contactos, el networking, hasta aún en eso. Y estuvieron cambiando el caso de lugar en lugar, y cuando por fin lo hacen, pues no, tiene que ser menores. Y ya lo bueno es de que ya pasó como un mes, y me acuerdo que yo así como que esto no va a agarrar, nadie va a querer hablar. Y hace un post una niña súper valiente, y es Jane Doe 1, y dice la verdad de las niñas menores de edad y Nazón Joaquín. Pero estuvo en inglés, lo estoy traduciendo más o menos. Sí. Y comienza a hablar. Ajá. Y yo siempre tenía que tener cuidado porque como yo sabía que me estaban monitoreando los de adentro, los de Berea, o sea, yo ya sabía que me estaban monitoreando, entonces yo tenía que estar viendo las historias que hacían post ahí en subreddit que eran de verdad. Yo Charín, porque sabía que él le daría miedo pues por mí, ¿no? Y yo me iba a ver con esta persona que se hizo pasar por este nombre en redes sociales, quienes nos íbamos a ver en una mall, y yo tenía a mi niña de 4 años conmigo.
Here, Xochitl Martin says, I moved it a little ahead because she was speaking about Reddit. That Reddit, which now they detest Xochitl Martin. They call her a criminal. They call her derogatory way. They don't want her in that Reddit anymore. But when they were friends, the administrators of Reddit and Xochitl, here, Xochitl tells us that she contacted Jane Doe number 1, and now in a closer way, she was able to agree to greet her and meet her in a mall. In other words, brother interpreter, this is where she clarifies that in the entire exhibition of Xochitl, never was there ever a alleged website that burned so much the former prosecutor of California, Xavier Becerra. Xochitl says that they sent me to look for minors so that I could advance my complaint. What do you opinionate to this respect, brother? Yes. Well, different from this, it seems that Xochitl is speaking, she's giving a history in her own way, because we know that there are other things that occurred in that topic of Reddit. It is 100% against Xochitl Martin in several aspects. And so they have taken her rags out to the air to this lady, but her herself recounts how the same people in the group helped her contact the prosecutors, but then they didn't. But she had already met with some prosecutors in California, and the only one who believed her was Donahue, whom, if I remember correctly, he's not a prosecutor. He was a detective who was part of those who testified in favor of, they spoke about the interviews with the Jane Does. I don't know if I make myself clear. To my understanding, he was not a attorney general. He was a detective who investigated, within quotes, because we know that there was a lot of errors there. It's very strange that the two people who did not believe her were the prosecutors. And the one that she says did believe her was a detective who was trying to put together a case. We know that detectives work through well-known cases. That is, from there we start with an interest. Then, after all the weaponry of the case passes, whatever it is, it was through the contacts, her network, that she says, or if it was through this website that was also, as we know, was nothing economic. If you know a little bit about Xavier Becerra's background, he has a study based on technology and computers. And then later, he becomes a lawyer, and he inherits that position of Attorney General from the one who is now Vice President of the United States. This was who was the prosecutor. When she takes a political position, she leaves that position, and this position of Attorney General is inherited to Becerra. He is not a practicing lawyer. He's a lawyer because the position requires it. But he has a technology study, and so he invests a great budget of the state in this website. But unfortunately, what we've laid out in the past is starting to, many of his contributors begin to fall. We can call them colleagues, people that he has in touch with, which are the dioceses of California, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Bernardino. And these lawsuits begin to raise, and he takes the liberty of using that information to send a letter to each diocese. And we have evidence of this through the reports that we received once with Brother Santiago, who he sent them a letter saying that in 30 days we are going to arrive to investigate such and such fundamental and a list of people who were under investigation. In other words, he used the website actually to enforce the law or to cover up and manipulate the information and give it, as they say, to give a whistle to his contributors. Because we know that there are also photos where he traveled even to Rome when he takes the Pope Francis took his place. But well, that's something else. The misuse of funds that didn't work. This is where it becomes in a political situation. Some people arrive who have nothing to do, as my sister Madai says. These are not people who have something to offer society. Well, these are easily manipulated, in my view. But this one, they create this high-profile case about a high-profile person, and this is where it becomes a political situation. Of course, Xochitl goes towards the economic, the money, because she's a person who has no assets. She wants to arrange the story in a way that best suits her case. From her giving herself the flag that she did all the work, and she puts this great big emphasis on everything. But on the other hand, we see the prosecutor who says that she entered through the website. It cost me millions of dollars, and these are the results. And so I think that we are all intelligent people. We can think and come to our own conclusions. But that is what they have forged. We have a detective who tells her this is not a case. He literally tells Xochitl, you don't have a case. We need minors. And she says that after she went and she gathered and began to bring and to carry out, and she was in quotes, she was eating out with these people, with detectives and all that. That is the clear evidence of what is forged. This is a clear evidence of these people who, as our sister Madai mentioned, they didn't have legal status within the country. The benefits begin. And then we remember, taking that into account, the Attorney General of California himself, Xavier Becerra, puts out that announcement, that ad. And not only that, but he declares, we will help you to receive benefits, your papers. In other words, what are they doing there? They are buying and inciting, giving a benefit to supposed victims. That, as it worked with one or two people, now they want to do it in a public way. That's very controversial. Here, everyone can see it as they do best, but these are two very different situations. Xochitl accommodates herself, giving her own narrative to her case, but Xavier Becerra also does it, adding to the fact that his work, according to him, in the state of California, bore fruit. These are situations, and we see them from an external point, that is outside the church, outside the community, and between the 2 points that it has, they do not coincide. They collapse within each other. So which one is the truth? What's real? I think that God and time will tell us exactly who is lying about each situation. But yes, my brother, this is very, very obvious that the inconsistencies are there. There's nothing solid that even the prosecutors are telling you. And again, the officers did not believe him, did not believe her. The detectives did because he was interested in putting together a high-profile case. And in the end, when the prosecutors of the same prosecutors have to argue and fight the case, they beat Xochitl and don't want her. They deny even mentioning her. They deny contact with her. Remember, she herself is saying that she was interviewed, being that in court, when they questioned her what was the relationship with Amanda Plisner and Xochitl Martin, she became indignant, ran away, and even disappeared. When they sent her to summons, which is what prosecutors do, they entered the court crying with crying guards, saying that they are intimidating us. This is the strategy of these people who, within the position, they abuse their powers. that was entrusted to them, as the population of California was entrusted to these people to forge a high-profile case. And now we are seeing the results. Now, this same thing for other external or major situations resurface. This is the brother. This is the issue we're having today, brother. Who is right? Who's telling the truth? To me, they are both lying about it. So it is, brother, and I would also like to know the opinion, of course, of these statements of my sister Madai, which are very explicit and which counter that theory by saying that they opened a website. But I would like us to hear a little more of Xochitl's statements, because there comes a point where she says that they went in an Uber, Jane Doe number 1 and Jane Doe number 3, directly to denounce. And so here, the press conference, which Xavier Becerra mentioned in his press conference, was crushed. It's clear that who recruited those minors to strengthen Xochitl's complaint, and that later the prosecutor's office itself, as our brother interpreter says, and we can read it in the transcripts that we once exposed on my brother Santiago's channel, when the prosecutor's office was asked what relationship you had with the Jane Doe, they washed their hands. They didn't want anything to do with Xochitl, so much so that on the day of the sentencing, Xochitl came out screaming, crying. Sharim came out screaming, calling predator to Rob Bonta, the prosecutor from California. Just imagine this delicate situation. We are going to listen, and we will soon listen attentively to the opinion and analysis of my dear sister Madai.
Nos vimos en una mall, pero créeme, sí tenía mucho miedo, pero por eso escogí un lugar público, una mall, ¿no? Sí, claro. Y la niña viene llegando. Y una cosita, es una niñita. Entonces por los amarres que existen en todo esto, ¿no? Pues la niña, con todo el miedo del mundo, me va y me platica lo que está sucediendo y cómo reacciona su familia. Y yo la conocía porque yo también servía con sus primas, pues. Ahí éramos pues de la iglesia, ¿no? Sí, son círculos pequeños, según entiendo. Sí, entonces yo sabía que ella era real, que ella era legítima, no era una actriz ni nada de eso, no, era ella. Y después de eso, después de platicar un poco con ella, le pregunto si ella podría hablar con las autoridades, y ella, con todo el miedo del mundo, me dice, pues voy a perder a mi familia. Y solo faltó decirle una cosa, y así dijo, yo denuncio, que era, esto le va a pasar a tus hermanos si tú no haces algo. Y esta niña de 15 años dijo, yo hablo con quien tenga que hablar. Entonces, eso es la primera niña, ella es amiguita de las otras dos niñas. Luego la segunda niña tiene la...
Listen to what she says. She is friends of the other two girls. In other words, of Jane Doe number 2 and Jane Doe number 3. That is how the chain is, of how Xochitl was able to contact and recruit so that they may denounce and afterwards destroy the theory and the supposed truth that Xavier Becerra supposedly obtained these reports. Let us continue paying attention. There, Sister Madai, I think we heard clearly how Xochitl Martin says that the third and the first went in an Uber. That Xochitl Martin herself was the one who opened, or the one who started this situation that now the prosecutor's office from California says they have no ties with her, and that from there the chain began To begin with her, being that Jane Doe number one had the other two friends of whom were willing to make these accusations. Sister Madai, it is incredible that in a documentary, no reporter of those who presume to be investigators not detect this lie from the prosecutor's office and also from Xochitl Martin. That I believe these statements are a type of sabotage for the civil case of the Attorney General's office. But sister, how dare a prosecutor stand and say that through a website they were able to open a way for the investigations and capture the accused, and then Xochitl Martin comes and says, no, they sent me to look for minors so that my complaint may prosper. Sister, this is an act, a Machiavellian act, orchestrated, sadly fabricated by the interest of Xochitl Martin. Go ahead, sister. Because of the interest of Xochitl Martin, and because of the hypothesis that I have always maintained when we talk about this, behind Xochitl Martin, there is one, there are two, or there are several more who are supporting this situation, this movement that she has planned, and that obviously, I repeat again, with the use of protagonism, using the prosecutor Becerra within politics, this is a movement that takes place. I give you a benefit, and in return, I receive a consideration. Do you want us to enter our government strong? Because that is what political is. That is how politics works. I want to obtain a profit. I want to obtain a benefit, to maintain within your cabinet, grow politically, to have an important position within your government, within your politics. Well, give me something that gives you strength to back you up, because I must have a serious cabinet. This is a prosecutor showing, and we see this many times, the body language that they present. The prosecutor is lying. He has lied. You just posted the video where he is holding the press conference. He's holding the press conference because of the alleged arrest of important people. He stutters. His gaze wanders downward or directs it down to the right. And so this means that he is taking back and remembering what he has to say because he's lying. And of course, Xochitl Martin herself throws to the ground her own argument. The web platform did not work. She searched. She spoke. She spoke beforehand with the Jane Does so that they can offer themselves as victims in exchange for what? In exchange for a financial benefit. And we've seen it. If we look the before and after of these Jane Does, it's completely different. And of all those women who unjustifiably joined this supposed movement, they also do so for an economic interest. Some of them are professionals, and they were not able to stand out socially in the world. They were not able to exercise a career. They were not able to manage their own assets. You think one of the Jane Does had the profile of being a professional? A woman who has the habit or the desire to prepare and improve themselves? Because within our community, this is a slogan. It is a slogan. So that it is not misunderstood, it is an obligation that we have. The church, the light of the world, promotes human growth and development. And if anyone has emphasized that we develop ourselves professionally, intellectually, technically, or in the profession we perform, it is the apostles of God. In his time, the servant of God, our brother Samuel, and now with much work and vehemence, he does not take his foot off the pedal, the apostle of Jesus Christ. You can see within the profile presented by the so-called Jane Does first that they are girls. The term girls, we too, Brother Gerardo, Brother Interpreter, and our audience, we have to get used to calling them children or adolescents, because the term child, generalized as child, as the ladies do here, is already discriminatory. The young women, we could say the young ladies, or the women given their age, are not girls. They are fully aware and were aware of the way they were dealing with him. So much so that Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 3 take an Uber here. I mean, what geniuses, what spontaneous act to go and denounce after they previously speak to Xochitl, who confesses that she manipulates them, who confesses that she talks to them, and does not have to say it. Her text is here. They go to the prosecutor's office and they go to the attorney general to denounce. What did they denounce? What did they present? A show? They lent themselves to do a show because in exchange they were going to have the payment. They were going to obtain residence. They were going to obtain legal status. They were going to obtain a house. And so much so that this is the precedent for all those women and men who denounce to see their immigration status. They do not have a document that supports them to have legal and correct and formal stability in the United States. They are undocumented people. They are migrants who have migrated mostly from our country to go live in the United States. And they have already known the way because obviously those going to the United States currently have a better economic situation than when they presented themselves as victims. Isn't it then the preparation of a created, forged, superficial victimhood? Is it not an authentic victimhood? Because it must have been so. If it would have been so, there would be no failure in the analysis or in the alleged case that was intended. It was intended to be exercised against the person of the apostle of Jesus Christ. Here's a profile. We're going to see them, and we're going to see them, the ones who are going to be joined by some professionals who never made the career. Well, that has nothing to do with the church, the light of the world. That has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the person of the apostle of God. It has to do with you as a human being, because we are conscious. We are thinking people, and so you have to have a knowledge and an understanding of what you are doing and what is good for you. Therefore, we should not be surprised if one more is added or one less. They all have an economic purpose. Those who are already American citizens, well, they go for an economic purpose. Do they have a property? Do they have a house where they live, where they are? You have to see their environment to then also give them credibility. We have to see their before and their after, so we can see if truly, with this, Brother Gerardo, we are confirming that this is a political issue. Political, and behind the Xochitl, behind the Jane Does, and behind all those people who have been defaming the person of the apostle of Jesus Christ, there are economic interests. There are interests of power, and that may be the person who is, well, as we would say in politics, who is supporting the people who are supporting this plot. Well, they didn't like it. They didn't like the sentence. They did not like the possibility that the apostle of God, with the good behavior that he has, because they always shine. Wherever they are, they always shine and carry their goal of preaching. Well, they did not like it, and now we have to go back to take the facts. This is what is surprising. We have to take up facts that did not serve a state prosecutor's office, a first sovereignty prosecutor's office, to take it to a federal prosecutor's office, to the federal level, to a second sovereignty, to then resolve what it did not study and did not think was correct, when the same parameter of the first and second instance of the first and second sovereignty is the same. And it is not possible to take up facts that did not serve the prosecution to establish a case. What they are looking for here is money and to delay the departure, because that is what the apostle of God has the right to obtain: a defense, a way out in a timely manner, because the prosecutor's office agreed to it. It was not him. It was the prosecutor's office who proposed it to him, because he had made a serious mistake. And we know that to this day, the lawsuit of Xochitl went into a tailspin and was about to, and coincidentally, when it is about to be shipwrecked or has already been shipwrecked and does not serve to obtain an economic benefit, another victim appears. What a coincidence. Well, here we see the support that he has for wanting to deprive the apostle of God of his freedom with documents, with facts that will be analyzed and cannot be taken into consideration. Because even if the authority makes mistakes, if it makes mistakes, it must assume its consequences and stick to what has already been agreed. And we must move forward. And we must move forward to give certainty precisely to what he says when we talk about due process. It is because a person or those two people have the right to be heard before a judge, to offer evidence before a judge, to vent their arguments before a judge, and both parties seek a sentence favorable to their interest. There was no due process here. Your audio went out, sister? I think my sister Madai lost her audio. I see that her microphone is on. She must be having problems with her audio, but her exposition is very clear. Very clear, her analysis from the legal field. And it's clear to us with the statements of Xochitl Martin how it was how these complaints and the recruitments for their interest of whom this had been forged from the beginning. So my brethren, the panelists, waiting for our sister Madai, I'm going to give continuation to the document of which we wanted to share this document, from which it was issued by the United States Courts for the Central District of California, which is the United States of America, plaintiff to Nason Joaquin Garcia, defendant. That's what is in the document. My sister has reconnected. Onward, sister. Go ahead. God pay you, Brother Gerardo. I was feeling so inspired and someone pulled me. No, don't. That's not true. Returning to the topic. We see then that the profile that these Jane Does have, that the young ladies, the Jane Does, it is a low profile. A profile that is manipulable. And that demands of Xochitl, because she does not have backing. We saw that their lawyer resigned because they themselves made mistakes. Her lawyers resigned and the case falls apart. And that's where someone else supposedly appears. This is a political plot with the sole purpose, and I reiterate it again, of wanting to deprive the apostle of Jesus Christ of his liberty. No more. It is time for justice to be done as well. If they failed, it is time for them to apologize, because they cannot continue to deprive of liberty a person against whom there are no crimes. And something should be very clear to those who take this phrase to the point where he pleaded guilty. The apostle of Jesus Christ never pleaded guilty because there is no evidence, nor was he declared and was formally declared by a judge on the basis of a covenant, because that judge had to use the sacramental phrase to give efficacy and fulfillment to the sentence that had been rendered. What was that word? Do you plead guilty? That's the sacramental phrase, the solemn phrase to give efficacy to a sentence. It's not because he has pleaded guilty, as he has always been doing with intent and mentioning Isaías Alvarado, Univision, and Milenio, all these channels that are so eager to harm, damage, and contaminate society, and of course the person of the apostle of Jesus Christ. With this I conclude, Brother Gerardo. God pay my sister, very, very clear. Your exposure to the chat also appreciates it. And yes, it is very important to address these types of points in context and not to go for the sake of ignoring and misinforming in a terrible way, as the pseudo-journalist Isaías Alvarado knows how to do. Well, my brethren, we are quickly reading this document to start with the analysis, because it is very short. It is 4 pages. What is written is very short, but we are going to see what this document directly contains. It says, the grand jury indicts around May the 6th, 2019, in Los Angeles County, within the Central District of California. Listen closely to the date. Look at the date, because we are going to show images that our dear sister peace and love, and our dear warrior sisters, always united with that scope of that will to unite with this struggle without violence, have taken the task of investigating. These accusations are immediately refuted. It says around May the 6th, 2019, in Los Angeles County, within the Central District of California and elsewhere, defendant Nason Joaquin Garcia knowingly employed, used, persuaded, induced, attracted, and coerced a minor to know the victim, minor one. This is how they're being referred to, as a minor victim. One who was then approximately 16 years old, to engage in sexually explicit conduct as defined in the 18th article of the United States, section 2256, subsection number 2, subsection A, for the purpose of producing a visual representation of such conduct, knowing and having reason to know that the visual representation would be mailed or transported and transmitted to you and be effected on interstates and foreign commerce, and that such visual representation was produced and used. That's what the first page tells us. The second is very short. It says, of material which had been mailed, sent, and transported within and which affects interstates and foreign commerce, and whose visual representation was actually transported and transmitted and affected to the interstate. This would be good to analyze what exactly that means when they mention these interstate highway points. It says, count 2, around June the 3rd, 2019, in Los Angeles County, within the Central District of California, defendant Nason Joaquin Garcia knowingly possessed an iPad with the serial number, and it gives a serial number, that contained at least one image of child pornography as defined in the 18th Code of the United States, title that had been produced, used in material mailed, shipped, and transported and made in commerce, conducting interstate and foreign trade by any means, including by computer. And to the end of this document, it's very short, these accusations, because it says there the grand jury indicts, and it points to the number of 5 videos. We see what that iPad contained according to the statements in this document. And there at the bottom we see who signs it: Mac E. Jenkins, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Federal Deputy Penal Division. And this is what we have, dear brother panelists. That's what we know, what's most recent in the news, what is clear to us and well informed to us opportunely by the Council of Bishops in an official communication, that they are derived from the same whistleblowers in the state case, and now they come to this federal case. There are not thousands of victims. It is the same circle from which it is forged as seeking one way or another, some of them attacking economically, others wanting to pretend that the Apostle of Jesus Christ will not get out of prison. So my brethren panelists, I'd like to start with my brother interpreter to continue with this order of opinions. My dear brother interpreter, this dossier, of which you did us the great favor of sharing with us, is very short, for we would like to hear your opinion, brother, about these accusations. And of course, it is striking how the California prosecutor's office magically omitted an iPad with this explicit material. According to the facts that they had laboratories, they had forensic experts, they had all the apparatuses to uncover the iceberg. And it turns out that the FBI arrives and makes those who boasted so much in the prosecutor's office look incompetent. Go ahead, brother. Yes. Well, because once again, we see that these are baseless accusations or things that at the moment of arguing in this criminal case, where I imagine, or I want to think that somehow, I don't think that they have forgotten or they had passed it by. It'd be an exhibition of them that is very clumsy for them to say that. But I think that they try to use this, that they were not able to charge him with, to give him these charges in the penal case, in the criminal case of California, and now they bring it to this federal court. Now, here, they're going to say, and they're going to want to confuse using the words of a grand jury. No, it's because a jury already said yes, and it's going to, no. Well, every citizen of the entire country are sent summonses, as well as the county, the state, and on a federal level to go and serve as jurors in these proceedings. From what I understand is that if you are in a courtroom or you are part of a grand jury, which is with federal subpoenas, you're in a position of making decisions. In other words, there is a presentation of a case, and between one person and a group of people, they decide whether to proceed to investigate or save that time by denying the investigation to the feds. That is why, in a short, quick way, a group of people are used to move forward in this way. This proceeds, this does not, and that is whether it is or not, and that is the way in which the city, or rather the citizens, provide the service to the federal government. That's part, or being part of a grand jury is. There are situations where they are making decisions at best hundreds of cases a day. And that seems it could be for a few hours. They can go by very quickly. And these are abbreviations where a part of a selected jury, they decide whether something proceeds after that, because they proceed and the subpoenas begin to do these investigations. And that is where we are. We are in this phase. We are in the preliminary phase. It's first is for the jury to say yes, it continues, and to investigate whether there is actually a way to indict them, to make charges. And so the enemies not confuse this by saying a jury already said no. The only thing they decided is not to proceed. This is not to not give resources to the situation, or rather to resort to the federal court. It's not that they don't 100% investigate everything blindly. This is number one. Well, my brother, we have to pay attention to the dates. They give us clues to certain things, and we see again the words used very ambiguous, right? This one in the county of Central District of California and other places. In other words, the North Pole is another place. Also the South Pole. Which of these places? Within the country, outside the country? I mean, where were they? Where do these accusations come from? Because if something happened in Australia, the United States has no jurisdiction over Australia. Australia has its own sovereignty, has their own country, their own laws. I mean, there are little things that we are already beginning to see. Very technical way, this little thing that we can argue over and start debating about. This is my impression when reading this. Brother, I see that there are also two charges that if we start to investigate and use as a reference point this criminal case in the state of California, we will be able to bring up situations where, in my person, I think that this already happened, and it could not, for a certain reason, a reason that the prosecutor's office itself seems to me the prosecutor's office decided not to proceed, trying to impute these charges in the agreement. Also, because imagine, from 36 charges, 39 charges that were in the original indictment, 3 were agreed upon. Why is that? And among those charges, I'm sure that there were going to be these 2. Why didn't they proceed? Why did they decide, if they had the information that was so concrete, why did they decide not to use it? I think that it is the truth, as Sharim said, because these are people that are incapable of doing their job. It's, well, at the thought of each individual, but that is what I think of this, brother, these situations. This is what's emerging at this level, a little higher. As my sister Madai well said, there are interests behind these. There are political and financial powers, whatever it may be, behind these people that make this type of accusations escalate. We must also look at the dates. That is, this went through a grand jury in the June of this year. So when this one was heard, the lawyer of Xochitl in December, it came out on HBO saying that there was already a federal investigation. This wasn't in front of a jury yet. And it's not an investigation at the moment. It's an indictment. And based on something that's had already happened. So which research or which investigation are they talking about? This document is no evidence of a federal investigation. It's an indictment, an accusation in a federal court. However, we are at the point of discovery that is just beginning the investigation. When did this process begin? In June, maybe a few weeks before, or a few weeks or a few months before. Why? Because that's where you get in front of this preliminary jury, and that's where they proceed or not. And so this first page, which gives us the why, but it seems to me that these are issues that we have already addressed in the criminal case of the state of California. They resurface. Well, later I think we'll give more information and we'll do more from what we have in store about these allegations. My compelling question is whether the evidence in the hand of the prosecutor was so compelling. Why didn't they charge in the plea agreement? I'll leave it there, brother. Exactly, brother. Exactly. Good analysis that you have just exposed to us. These are a lot of questions that are left unanswered. And of course, with time, we will know all this that was terribly forged. Sister Madai, we have heard, and now that you have studied this document, the audience and the panelists who are present, we want to hear your opinion from the perspective of in the legal field, with that clarity that you have. What do you analyze from this document, sister? Go ahead. With what we have been arguing, Brother Gerardo, unfortunately, these types of crimes have been sought to be prevented worldwide, such as child pornography, human trafficking, sexual abuse worldwide. On a global level, the governments have sought to protect the women, the children, and to create norms for their sanctions and for a correct development in society. But these norms have also played a double duality. They serve to put and punish and deprive of liberty really innocent people who have not had prior knowledge, who have not been summoned, have not been previously summoned to testify, previously to give their testimony, because that is only one of the rights that was established in the First Amendment. Before you deprive me of my freedom, call me. You're a part of an investigation. Call me. Summon me and listen to me, because it is my right to a universal hearing so that I can also establish my defense. It's not that you immediately deprive me of my liberty without having evidence. That can be seen from this document. This is also a lie. They are once again plotting to impute crimes to the apostle of Jesus Christ under deceitful language. And why do I say misleading? Because it says what you have just read, Brother Gerardo, it says that there is an image, at least an image of pornography. At least, the word at least within the legal field is an assumption. It is something imprecise that leaves us in a state of defenselessness. Who are you accusing? It's one, it's two, it's three. Tell me clearly how many. But don't tell me at least, because maybe it can be none. Tell me specifically how many you found so that I can defend myself against those photographs. But if you tell me at least one, then also as a defense and also as a person to whom you are imputing me, this one can say there is none. It's one thing to have tenure. That's the misleading language. Tenure is one thing and production is another. Production is when we talk about selling, distributing, exhibiting, offering, facilitating to generate an income, to obtain an amount of money, an economy type profit. Tenure here, objectively, we would have to say, is only the tenure of it, of if that were the case, assuming, without conceding, what is certainly not accepted. But the language that they are using in the prosecutor's office, not us, tenure refers to issues related to a person's privacy. So is there tenure or is there production? Because if we talk about possession and production, they are two completely different figures. And one is related to privacy that does not generate damage to society until they are externalized or seen by third parties. This is a legal thing to do, and we have to stick it to the law. If we're talking about production, well, should the prosecution show us who it was sold to, who it was distributed to, who it was offered to, who was the material given to other than the owner of the iPad, to then say there is a production of pornography? You realize how the Attorney General's office seeks to confuse society and try to harm the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ? Again, they are completely different things. They are completely different figures and are behaviors that within criminal law are sanctioned and analyzed in different ways. One may have a penalty. The second, which is production, does have a duly established sanction, but the first has to do with the person with his or her privacy. See how then, when you seek to create a lie, the language has to be biased. Language has to confuse in order to make the judge fall into error as well, and of course the jury. Let's remember that jurors are not studied in law. They are people who are supposed to have a good development and have a good integrity, a good reputation within society. The words that they use and have been brought before a federal grand jury only to shock, to want to contaminate that conduct where we have seen what is the 39 charges that the brother interpreter clearly specifies. Why did the prosecutor's office only say 3? Why only the prosecutor's office? Do you think that if he had proven those 39 charges, he would have reached a settlement? Of course not. He would have had the perfect case to enforce, assert, and weigh the law, enforce and enforceable and apply it in the United States. And it didn't happen. We also see that they are trying to create a case. And I think this will be the first part, Brother Gerardo, because we have seen how the team of our sisters, the Soldiers United, is spectacular. And they have had and have obtained the information that, of course, and from this moment, it must be said, throws to the ground this supposed case that they want to impute to the Apostle of Jesus Christ. Because there is evidence, because there are sayings, and they are effective documents that for society and even for the authorities must be taken into account, because they are here as well as the statements that Xochitl Martin gave in an opportune manner to show us that she was coerced, that she said that she combined with the alleged victims so that they went to testify because the website of the Honorable Dr. Becerra, who is not a lawyer, and he gives himself this grandeur in his person of being a technologist, a person, a fairly efficient technology engineer, because they demonstrate with the arguments of Xochitl that she had to carry out the social work, the dirty work. She had to take the girls, as she considered manipulable, the young ladies she considered suitable, the young ladies who could be sold, and she knew their economic and legal situations in the United States, to be able to sell themselves to the highest bidder, give a testimony, to this day make a profit. This is the same case we are living now. Now, going to the Jane Doe number 1. With a Jane Doe number 1, they want to reopen a case because supposedly, because we haven't listened, they supposedly want to punish again the person of the apostle of God. This is not possible. And that is why we are here analyzing objectively and legally with the information that is provided, Brother Gerardo and my brother interpreter, with all this information that is being gathered, that this is a forged case where they do not obtain satisfactory, and now we are going for more. And we do not get, and we are going for more. That's not the legal system. The legal system gives you the opportunity to offer your experiences, to develop them, to drown them out. That is, to expose them, analyze them, and then obtain a judgment. And here, a sentence has already been obtained. Therefore, a person cannot be tried again for the same crime, because this is the cause of this Jane Doe number 1. It was together with the other Jane Does in their moment. And if they didn't take it into account, well, no one can allege their own clumsiness. Because if they did not expose it, if they did not expose it in front of a judge, if it was part of the file that had to be analyzed, and that the prosecutor's office itself that dismisses it, therefore, this same qualification parameter, this same guideline must necessarily be followed by a federal authority, because the federal authority effectively has its basis. It has its knowledge and applicability of the law in congruence with the first sovereignty and in accordance with the First Amendment. The rights of a person deprived of his liberty must be respected and not altered to suit the interest of third parties. I think that is the first part, Brother Gerardo, of the very important information that our sisters have obtained, and that shows that this case has no reason to exist, and that shows that they are lying, and that now those who are lying have to be punished. Enough of continuing to violate the rights of a person for the benefit and interest of third parties. Enough of continuing to damage the dignity of a person, because these people who have carried out these illegal behaviors must also be punished. The law is for all, not just for some, and it must be applied in a general way to all and not to just some, according to our conveniences. God pay my sister, very clear as always. And of course, the point to be made, and of which my brethren panelists already gave the preamble about the date of which the apostle of Jesus Christ is accused of committing or producing material that is punishable by law, because we gave, and not a servant, but yes, our United Warrior sisters, our sister Paz y Amor and other sisters in this hard work, they began to see the dated presentations that the apostle of Jesus Christ had at the time, because we know that the apostle of Jesus Christ, from the moment he takes his ministry, he, in a tireless work, dedicated himself to visit every house of prayer, every state, every country, and he documented where he was, what he was doing, where he was. We saw him visiting different houses of prayer at all hours. I repeat, something that is majestic, a tireless work, brother interpreter, beloved sister Madai. And here are the dates. Here we are seeing when, in fact, there it says Apostolic Agenda. It says Jubilee of Life, the 50th anniversary of the birth of the Apostle Nason Joaquin, of which we celebrated on May 7th, 2019. There we see the image of the Apostle of Jesus Christ that testifies that he was in the beautiful province. There we see another image also in the Apostolic Agenda. Jubilee in beautiful province, the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Nason Joaquin, walks in the streets and walks the sanatorium May the 6th. Practically every day it was documented, brothers, panelists, the arduous work of the Apostle of Jesus Christ. I don't understand these accusations. Maybe it's unbelievable, brothers, how you can get to these situations. Of course, we are not surprised by those current ones. Sadly, I would say, and in the realm of offending corruption, because we already have the precedent of it, it is deduced that this agent of the Attorney General's Office of California, who manipulated, who edited, who twisted in a certain way conversations of the devices of the Jane Doe so that they may appear that they were talking about the Apostle of Jesus Christ, when in fact they were talking about their own boyfriends. Notice only the need to fabricate evidence to harm, destroy, end with a person of whom, through a forensic study, Attorney Jackson let the judge know that the prosecutor Joseph, the people, Joseph Sadusky, manipulated conversations of the Jane Does where they referred to their boyfriends, to insert the name of the apostle and make it seem that they were addressing or were mentioning him. It's something terrible, my brethren. But here we see clearly the date, May the 6th, 2019. You can find it. It's public information. Here we see that in April 26, 2019, the joy and blessing. Here the doctrine is obeyed through faith. May the 3rd, he was in beautiful province in his prayer. That the Apostle of Jesus Christ, from a very early hour in the morning, he is attentive to his people. We're going to continue seeing the images. The truth is very good material that our sister sent us. Joy in beautiful province for Apostolic Jubilee, May 9th, 2019. There we see the Apostle of Jesus Christ, our sister Anita. This image, I am sure that there are many brothers who are witnesses who were involved in this project. I think it's Sister Madai, the one of the 50 brave. Is this right? This image says? Yes, it illustrates new fireworks and a show of water and joy in beautiful province for the Apostolic Jubilee of Guadalajara, Jalisco, May 8th, 2019. And that's when the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Sister Madai, I think you have more information about this day. This day that is so special. So special. In fact, I believe that it is on that very day that the servant of God presents his little granddaughter. Is this right, sister? Completely true, Brother Gerardo. On that date, the servant of God received a cyclist team that was formed due to the awareness that the apostle of God carried out in the church and for the church, in the sense that we had to take care of our health. He desired that also our integral human development, our health. He took care of himself, protected himself, and invited us to practice some sport or exercise. And taking the words and desires of the apostle of God, a cyclist team was formed that exists to this day called 50 Brave. This team was organized. This cyclist team was formed with, obviously, I reiterate, people who like to practice cycling. And those who don't, who also joined this team to ride from Chapala, Jalisco, to the beautiful province neighborhood, 50 kilometers. Each kilometer represented a year of life that God granted to the apostle of God, 50 years. And there is the present. He was the one who, at 12 o'clock in the day, before 12 o'clock in the day, received all this team. And there are videos where you can see the contingent arrive and the apostle of God comes out to receive them. So, according to the information that Isaías Alvarado has given, let him explain to us. Let him clarify for us on his Twitter page. Let him clarify. Let him always be broadcasting. Let him clarify to us through Univision how a person can be in two places. How a person can generate ubiquity. That's the legal term. Is there ubiquity in a person? A person can generate ubiquity. It produces it by seeming to stand on a balcony to the contingent, giving them a teaching, as is always the purpose of the apostles of God, not just to them. There are brothers from the beautiful province who also know that when the apostle of God receives this contingent, which were not 50 cyclists, there were more than 100 cyclists between men and women, mostly men, but there were women who also participated. He was very happy and he said that they were practicing a sport because this cyclist team would also serve to evangelize the souls who saw them riding with order, who saw them practice a sport with order, with health, with respect between men and women, according to the doctrine. Can a person, Mr. Isaías Alvarado, be in two places at the same time? May he be presenting a member of his family at the same time and be carrying out illicit, morbid, perverse acts which they intend to impute to him? That's why they don't give us dates. And when dates are not given in an investigation, they're lying. The person who is accused is being left in a complete state of defenselessness, because then he has the elements to prove what is being said here. The dates, or supposed dates that they want to point out, they result contradictory. Because as our brother Gerardo has said, all the activities that were carried out while the apostle of God was exercising his ministry in freedom, they were recorded. They were recorded moment by moment, and this is no exception. Now that he is greeting that contingent, I don't know if they have any more photographs, Brother Gerardo, in relation to this date, because it is the date that they intend to point out to him and impute him with the number 1. He is here in Guadalajara, Jalisco. We are reading that he is in Guadalajara, Jalisco. We are seeing his entire agenda developed. And so we ask Isaías Alvarado and we ask the prosecutor's office, can a person be in two places at the same time? Someone's lying here. And it is not us. It's not the community, the light of the world. Someone is lying. And it would have to be analyzed who it is. Because up to this point, we have not seen a psychological study in relation to the alleged victims. Are they people of legal age, as our sister Hilda Castro points out? Why then does one of the women have to speak on his behalf? Is he incapable? Is he an idiot? And the terms I'm using are regulated in the civil code, in the amendment, so that they don't feel offended. These are the correct stated legal terms. He's an idiot. He's incapable. He's a person who isn't conscious. He doesn't understand, so that they may speak for him and take him and take him so that he can say, "Here I am. Yes, I remember that I was abused." There is no congruency in times, and they don't give time. And it has already become a habit for Isaías Alvarado to throw the stone and hide. That from now on, information with dates must be given, with times, with names, because his sources are giving it to him, because his source is telling him. So why not give the complete information? He always does so in a biased manner to contaminate the society in the United States. Because in Mexico, it is very difficult, as in other countries, for us to believe his lies. It is in the United States that they want to contaminate again the form and action of the Apostle of God when we are here watching the trials. He was receiving us because I was part of that team of 50 brave people. The Apostle of God was receiving us. That day, at approximately 11:59, 12 o'clock in the day approximately, he was receiving this contingent and he was introducing us to his first granddaughter. He was making us participants and sharing the happiness that he had, because obviously God was blessing his family. His family was growing, and he was taking advantage of this moment when he received us to introduce us along with his young granddaughter, with his companion, our sister Alma, from the balcony. So it can't be that a person be in two places. It's not logical. It's not credible either. And that's what the prosecutor's office will have to prove and justify. That's right, brother. You have to show conclusively how it is possible that he was in Guadalajara and now an alleged victim appears, who is denouncing that his perverse illicit acts happened when he is standing here on his balcony, receiving them. Because I participated in that ride from Chapala to beautiful province, covering 50 kilometers. There are videos, but here we are seeing he is receiving us, and there are videos, and there's evidence of what he told us. So now, they are going to change the date. Since you see these proofs, they are going to want to change the dates, because that is why they do not specify exactly in their facts and in the narration of their facts when it happened, so that they can try to accommodate everything. But a date has already been said, and with the work of our sisters, it is being shown that the Apostle of God was in Guadalajara. A person cannot be in two places at the same time and exercising two different behaviors at the same time. Here are the proofs. So it is, our sister, God pay you. Brother interpreter, the proofs are so conclusive, as our sister says. So what else could happen in this scenario that she mentions, our dear sister, that they can even modify those ambiguous words that they handle, not giving dates, so that an alibi can be established and be able to prove that it was not being carried out when he was accused of the crime. Brother, what is your opinion on this? Yes, well, we already have a history with this type of acts through the prosecutor's office. The situation is in the state of California, as they said, of a term that is recapitulating by saying that this happened between February and September, giving an inaccurate time frame. This always trying to give the way out, not in a good argument. Well, the dates, the times don't coincide. I imagine for a person who has suffered or who is in a situation of accusing someone of abuse in this way, I think that this person has it very well engraved by the situation. They lived the drama, the trauma that can be caused. However, here, the same document shows us the opposite. I mean, That's why I pointed out when we read in the document. The beginning, it begins with the Central District of California and other places. In other words, from there's already an incoherence. It no longer assembles. Well, now, as I told you, they can be in other places. From the North Pole, that's another place. The South Pole to Australia. What do I know? China. Any other country in the world is another place. So why so much ambiguity? Because no, if they are real, forceful acts, how solid a strong accusation is unambiguous, straightforward and clear. In this case, we see it again. It's not clear. It's very ambiguous. A situation can be accommodated no matter how they try to argue it. They give themselves the way out. There is no unstable argument left. Why? Because they themselves don't give this concrete situation. That's why with these types of accusations that are very ambiguous, at the time that you ask that question, or that, that interview of the first accusation, the first indictment that is going to be carried out, that is going to take place, that's where the lawyers have the right to say, the way you're doing it, it's very tricky. And that is why it doesn't have validity. So it's I feel that in this way, this argument, this accusation can be argued and discarded and made to fall. So on that side, I think the lawyers are going to be very well informed and able to argue this. But we've already seen the courts, how they can be matched in a way of trying to excuse and proceed without there being a real basis. We've seen it in the past. When as our sister Madai said, when these people of high profile or these high impact cases, not necessarily because of the accusations, but because of the person that they are. We see it with all the social people who do society good. We have Mandela. We have Martin Luther King. How many people didn't exist who went through the same situations? The government concocted something to put them in jail, to detain them, to even go so far as to end with their lives. We see it in history of the United States, and not only here, but around the world, that when a person with a high social impact, there are many disagreements. There are many people of interest who do not want that person to continue in that way. So for me, again, we get into those ambiguous accusations. No face, no name, no accuracy. And this should be something that is discarded from my point of view. Why? Because it's a very shaky accusation. It is an accusation that is very unstable, moldable, depending on the answers that are given in an interview. That's what I think regarding this, especially here. We are mentioning that in the trajectory days before, where the person of the man of God was, and thinking of it well, as members of the church, we see the work of the man of God. We saw how he was tireless from 4:30 in the morning, that he would get up to do his prayer before the 5 o'clock prayer. He would eat his meals, his food, and there were people that accompanied him. I don't know if you can see, he would eat breakfast with the ministers, he would go with the professionals, and he had a very full schedule of activities, the man of God, so that he can be in the Los Angeles County in California or in any other place. So it is very inaccurate that in his work in those days, exactly on those days that this document is mentioning, we have more than proof. We have personal testimonies of the same members of the church, as well as our sister Madai participated in the activities. Your brother was also in that place, and we saw. Suddenly we heard that the man of God was in this place, that the man of God went to visit the church in this other place, and now he is there, and word was spread. And so the brothers themselves knew the trajectory and the agenda of the man of God. So busy and so saturated that it was. Why? Because that's what he wanted to do. That's what he cared about, taking care of, teaching, seeing what was happening, and paying attention to the whole church that was present at that time in those dates. So to tell us that this happened on this day, especially this day, it is illogical, knowing the agenda of the man of God on that day as saturated as it is. I don't know, maybe someone who has no notion of how the man of God worked with the church can believe by some active member who has been there or had any notion of what happened in those days on that date. Of course, they won't believe it, because that's why, my brother, because the work of the man of God was continuous from the moment he got up until the moment he fell asleep. He was continuously accompanied and scheduled, because there were many activities at that time for the apostle of the Lord, my brother. But that's what I managed to derive from this on. So it is, brother. God pay you for your analysis. I apologize if I disconnected. The equipment warming up, it begins to become a little difficult, but I can hear it because I have another device to listen from YouTube. And it's very clear the presentation of my brother, what we have read in documents, what we have heard from the sister Madai, what we saw now in evidence. We are going to see how the accusers are going to behave in this case, looking at the hard work of the apostle of Jesus Christ to see how they are going to sadly reinvent these false accusations. So it is more than clear. If my brother panelists, quickly in the chat, I was reading our brother Chuck and many other brothers who do us the honor of accompanying us, that they witnessed that day of the 50 brave of the cyclist from Chapala to the beautiful province. God pay you for your testimony, my brothers. God pay the brothers of the chat. And we are closing the program, my brethren, with after 2 hours and a half advanced, we are making our final analysis and our farewell from our dear audience. If you would like, my sister Madai, go ahead. Yes, Brother Gerardo, God pay you. Well, we are seeing again how in the face of the dissatisfaction of the third parties, they once again want to affect and harm freedom and putting the integrity of the apostle of Jesus Christ at stake. It's not fair, nor is it possible, because today they have been shown the proofs of the date which, as the brother interpreter comments, it is spoken of in the heading of that writing, Central District of California and elsewhere. Each state that makes up the country of the United States has its rules. It has its laws. It has its competence. Therefore, you cannot judge a person arbitrarily. Each judge has a limited activity, and the application of the law that is called jurisdiction in a given area by kilometers or meters to exercise the right. This case has already been analyzed, and here will be the evidence, and here we will be waiting to demonstrate moment by moment where the apostle of Jesus Christ was. They do not want to give dates because obviously they have the viability of being able to say, well, we remember that it was not in May, it was in August. Oh no, it was in September, it was in October. But this has to stop. And it must stop with an adequate defense, where it demands and they ask that it be specified that at times and moments it must stop, because we can demand from those people who are asking for and exhibiting information supposedly from a reliable source that they give dates, because then this also allows us to establish an adequate defense for the person of the apostle of Jesus Christ. we clearly see, and it has been demonstrated, how all these people are supported by Xochitl Martin along with her husband, together with the alleged victims called Jane Does, whose name to this day everyone in society knows, because we were not the ones who discovered them, who exposed them. There were channels of themselves who opened their identity, and that to this day, it seems ridiculous to me that they are called Jane Does when their first and last name have been exposed, because it was they themselves who exposed themselves. That they still want to benefit and want to obtain a benefit by mandate of third parties to harm the person, the stability of the apostle of Jesus Christ, his family, and others. There is a legal system that establishes principles as due process. I have the right to a hearing, I have the right to be heard, and I have the right to offer evidence. But I also have the right that you impart me justice and give me the assurance that you are going to be an impartial authority, not an authority that you are going to lend yourself with the powers that a state confers on you to impart justice, to put on a show, to take away your credibility in the position you hold as a judge. No. I have the right for you to act in an impartial manner. The evidence is here. The timing match the supposed dates that the victim is giving of the number of Jane Doe number 1. Therefore, their argument falls apart. But if the prosecutor's office has already laid the groundwork, it is time for it to stop moving them. It is time for the first sovereignty and the second sovereignty to come to an agreement and respect what has effectively been requested. An impartial justice that does not happen as it did, unfortunately, Luther King, who was also deprived, accused. He was punished because he made a movement for justice, for peace, for social change in the United States. Why? Because it frightens them. They are frightened by the conduct of the apostle of Jesus Christ. It has been peaceful, honorable in every way as a citizen and as a spiritual leader. So, you don't have to scare them. But we are living in the contemporary time that our Lord Jesus Christ lived. He was accused of crimes that at the time were sanctioned by the government, by the laws, unjustifiably. Today we are seeing it again. But today, there are also the means to raise our voice and say with justification to our community and society. Here, we are demonstrating with evidence and with truths and testimonies, not as fictitious victims of the real victims that we have been, because we have lived persecution, because we have been unjustifiably beaten by the interests of third parties. And why do I say third parties? Because it can't be possible and it's not believable that Xochitl Martin is sustaining a life, covering her needs for clothing and food in a way that we see her as dignified, because we do not see her physically deteriorated. We do not see her starving for more than 4 years, and that she is holding a trial, or that she is sponsoring a trial in which she has to cover lawyer fees. While it is true that lawyers hope to win a case in order to make a bigger profit, it is also true that a lawyer does not work for free. It is also true that it is the same case that is experienced with the Jane Does. Why? Because they also go in search of an economic end. But if there is no reparation for moral damages, it is clear that there was no crime committed either. And that is why they are now creating a new case through the analysis of old evidence. But this should not be allowed by society or by the authorities. And we are part of that society. And we also respectfully raise our voices because we have the right to do so. No one can curtail our right to say this. This is what really is happening. First of all, so that our community is informed, so that our brothers and sisters are informed, but so that society knows and remains the precedent of how an American authority how an entire system lends itself to harm and deprive of its freedom and want to deprive at all cost of its freedom the life, the honorability of a man who has transcended in search of a social benefit for the benefit of a better society, for the benefit of a better world for ourselves and our families. That is the person they seek to deprive of their freedom. A leader who has transcended and continues to transcend, because although he is still deprived of his freedom, his work continues here, bearing witness to his honorability. And we are here too, with God's help, convinced of this struggle, together with this whole great team that is behind us, doing a tireless job every day to demonstrate, not to convince, to prove that the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Nason Joaquin Garcia, is innocent, has been innocent, and continues to be untouched, because it is the interest of third parties who seek to keep him deprived of his freedom. God pay you for this invitation. I am always grateful for this invitation, Brother Gerardo, and to share a panel with our brother interpreter, but I am very grateful that your audience conducts itself with a correct language, a language that characterizes the church, the light of the world. It's not a language that is inciting. On the contrary, we are conscious, thinking, intelligent, and people who obey that beyond the passion to which we have the right to externalize, because we are human beings, are observed, and that beyond what our feelings always allow us to externalize, an analysis is made with respect. In this channel, its participants are always expressing themselves with respect, and that is what gives it a pulse and gives it seriousness and support to the information that we give thanks to the work of this great team of Soldiers United. I'd like to congratulate all of them and not leave one of them out, because they are all really top quality researchers, serious, unwavering, convinced of the defense. I don't want to leave any of them out. I want to congratulate all of them, but I really appreciate how they conduct themselves in their language. To all their audience, I congratulate, because they support us. They support us, and then they show that we have a conscious, knowledgeable public, but one that applies a language that is characteristic of the church, the light of the world, a language of conscious and analytical respect. God pay you for your invitation. I hope to share a table with you again. God pay you for giving me the opportunity to be useful to my community. And from here, I send you a embrace, and we continue firm onward with the Apostle of God, because we are not fanatical people. We are not ignorant people. Here are the truths. And now we hope that you can refute them just as well with real documents, dates, times, and dates. No inaccuracies, because that leaves the person of the Apostle of Jesus Christ in a state of defenselessness, and it cannot be this. The two parties must enter into equal circumstances, on equal defense. I was glad to be with you. God bless you. God pay you. I send you an embrace, a very strong embrace, and I hope that we will share an interesting analysis table again with my brother interpreter and with you, Brother Gerardo. God pay you, and with all your team that is before you, God pay you, God bless you. Amen, my sister. God pay you for your participation, for your analysis, for all the points that you have clarified for us. And of course, we continue to work for more analysis tables, gladly informing our beloved audience. Dear brother interpreter, I am also grateful for your participation. God pay you, brother, a embrace in Christ for you and your companion. You know that we esteem you, that great team that our sister Madai mentions so much, who are working hard, united warriors, each and every one of them, brave, valuable women who sometimes make this a little more practical for us because of all the material they share with us. God repay you, my brother. I'll leave you with your last message and your farewells. Yes, brother. Well, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to collaborate with you in this panel with our sister Madai, as always. Well, we know that through the communication that the Council of Bishops gave us yesterday, these people, they do not stop in to bring these situations, not attacking the church and the men of God. But again, the men of God had already told us, and we use those words. There's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, to be embarrassed about. We are confident that one day in the not too distant future, God will bear witness to all this that they are exhibiting. And although even in a moment it can be painful, it can be uncomfortable, but victory is certain. So, all my brethren, with our heads held high, this does not frighten us, much less our faith. On the contrary, if we were not the church of God, we would not be in these attacks, in the minds of these wicked people who want to see the church and the person of the man of God defeated. If we were another one of those denominations where it was not of an impact, that did not generate this well-being for society, this would perhaps be another situation. They would not focus on attacking, defaming, accusing. It would be the total opposite. Maybe, but no, there is nothing to be ashamed of. Our faith, the election is in our heart, and I think that all those who are here listening, this does not shame us, embarrass us. On the contrary, one day we accepted a challenge at the side of the man of God, and we are here fulfilling, my brother. Here we are, being that, holding our heads high, and with our God, fulfilling and overcoming this challenge. My brother, with this thought, I leave you. God pay you, God keep you, and I'll see you next week.